Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Optimized Ecommerce Podcast. I'm Tanner Larsson, and today we're going to talk about the number one conversion killer on your e-commerce store when it comes to copy and your sales message and what's going on there. So today we're joined by Bret Thomson. Bret is a funny talking ecom copywriting magician. He lives down in Australia, and he's been with the BGS team for a couple of years now. Definitely one of the best e-commerce copywriters on the planet. Super excited that we've been able to have him for part of the team as long as we have. And he's a major asset to our Amplify clients, to our Ecom Insider members. And the dude literally eats, sleeps, and breathes not only copy, but Ecom Insider as a thing. That's literally his world and his family, and he just loves it. And plus, a lot of the time, if you get on the phone to see about joining Ecom Insider, you wind up getting to talk to Bret because he's the gatekeeper. He loves to kind of like vet people to make sure we don't have any bad apples that ever pop into BGS. And couldn't ask for a better brother in that regard. Like he just nurtures that group and takes care of it so well. It's awesome. But today, aside from buttering him up, we're actually going to talk about what he's good at, which is copywriting, and specifically the number one copywriting conversion killer, and how you can avoid this, but actually make your copy convert better, make it sell more, make it do more, and just basically make a whole bunch more money, sales, and customers by avoiding this problem and doing it correctly. So Bret, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, mate. Always pumped and excited to be chatting to you, my man. And they say time flies when you're having fun. This is my 4th year, mate, in the team, brother.
It is. I know we've been here a long time. Yeah. So that's one of the cool things. Like it's like you've been around 4 years. We have like Amplify clients who are approaching their 4th year as well. Like most companies talk about like, oh yeah, our retention rate is 3 months or 4 months. Our Amplify clients stay 4 years. Like it's mind-boggling, and our team too. It's crazy. So super excited to have you here, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So why don't you talk about this number one copy conversion killer?
Okay, cool.
Talk about that. What is that?
Well, I can't take credit for this, mate. I remember, as you know, there's a copywriting / marketing legend that not everyone will know. His name's Dan Kennedy, right? And I was reading a Dan Kennedy report years ago, and he asked the question, when it comes to copywriting, what's the number one biggest obstacle that a copywriter has to face to get conversions, right? And of course, you'd get a gazillion different answers. Is it understanding your market? Is it come up with a big idea, the best headline, all the rest of this? And none of that. The answer is readability. Because you could have the best copyright in the world, but if it looks like a dog's breakfast, then it's not going to get read. Mm-hmm. So that's always stuck with me, and it's true and what I love having this conversation with you more than anyone is because when it comes to increasing readability, there's two sides of it. There's bad readability causes instant sales friction, but there's layout friction and there's copyrighted friction. Now, with yourself and Matt and the RO team, you guys specialize in the layout friction, so you can increase readability just by splitting up a description into different tabs, which really annoys copywriters because we want it all to be nice and long, but we're very humble when that gets proven wrong. And there's also some copywriting techniques that increase readability. Because the big premise of all this is this one statement, which I beat this drum all the time on the copywriting critique calls, and that is the more they read, the more they buy.
Yep.
Or the more you tell, the more you sell. So that's the big thing I want listeners or people watching this to understand. One of the biggest things you've got to do is make sure that your copy in the product descriptions, your emails, your ads or whatever, it's easier to read because it does. Sometimes with bad layout, they won't even read the first letter of the first word, and they've already decided to skim read.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I know how important this is, but at the same time, like I'm sure there's people listening going, readability, that is so boring. Like how that isn't exciting or sexy or anything. But do you have any kind of like a story or something you can share about like how important readability is and like how it's actually improved stores? This will, something to suck people in and go, oh, maybe it's not so boring. Maybe I should pay attention to this episode.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me put a little bit of a carrot in front of the audience. How would you guys like to get an increase of 34% for your add to cart? Right,
I'll take it. Yeah.
So, Tanner, you know this story very well. So we had an amplified partner doing about $1 million a month just selling hats. Mm-hmm. Had a very stock standard product description, which everyone seems to cut and paste what other people are saying, and for some reason they just drop all creativity and just put some plain vanilla text in there. So I went in there and added some good copy, but also made sure that the readability was very high, and we'll talk about that. But for someone doing $1 million worth of hats a month, we got an increase of 34% increase on add to cart for desktop. I think it was about 27% on mobile. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, you guys would have countless stories of increased conversions on the layout.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things. Like we always say, clarity trumps persuasion, and it's the same thing with your copy. Like again, the best copy in the world or the most persuasive copy in the world, if it's not clear, if it's not easy, if it's not pretty much subconscious in its ability for your mind to absorb it, it's not going to get utilized. And I always talk about the shopping and the buyer's journey. We want it to be as much in the subconscious mind as possible, because every time you bump up into that conscious mind, it's a cause for a disconnect. Because the reason it bumps into the conscious mind is because there's confusion, there's fear, there's something that doesn't quite sit right. Shopping, by and large, by social norms, is a very subconscious process. We don't have to think about it a lot. We just kind of go through it and we do it until there's something that like, it's hard to read, it's confusing, it's scary, there's like a trust issue or anything like that. And all of a sudden the buyer's journey takes you out of the subconscious into the conscious mind. And then that's where the objections happen. That's where the bounce happens. That's where the breakdown in conversion happens. So, in your case, the readability is just another part of that thing that we don't, when you read something, when you pick up a sticky note and you read what's on the sticky note, you don't think about what you're reading. You don't think about how to read it unless it's chicken scratch or it's Matt Stafford handwriting where it's so pretty and perfect, but it's so tiny you can't even see it. Like otherwise, that's the only time. But then it takes conscious effort to read it, right? If it's normal or just regular writing, you don't even think about it. You go, oh, I need to get eggs. Like that's what that said, but I didn't think about the words.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love how you use the term subconscious and conscious, because that's really what it is. It's almost you want them to have like a frictionless experience and just be in a thinkless zombie state and go all the way through to taking action. So
So let's go ahead and dive into it, right? Obviously readability is just to clarify again in case anybody wasn't sure. Readability is the number one copywriting conversion killer we're talking about here. So let's talk about bad readability. Like, what are some examples of that, and how are people doing it wrong? How are they making these mistakes? What kind of mistakes are they making?
Well, okay, cool. So you and I can probably go back and forth here, but from my old school, we don't see a lot of this now, but a number of years ago, some big problems was when people would run text all the way to the margin, left or right, mm-hmm. and big long sentences all the way from one margin to the other. And what I say to people, like, how many newspapers would you think they'd sell if there was no columns and it was just all long text? Like, instantly, it just feels like hard work.
Yep.
And also, subconsciously, using your term there, if you see text running right to the end and there's no margin there, it feels like it's broken. So what if the store's broken or there's a glitch, and what does that do to the trust and believability? So you're stepping on the wrong foot right out of the gate.
Yep.
So and other things. Again, mistakes. This is the one which we see so often, which we call wars of text, like big chunky paragraphs. Mm-hmm. And I promise you, and I know this to be true because I'm the same, just out of my peripheral, if I see a big wall of text, I wouldn't even read the first letter or the first word. I'll just start skimming reading if there's anything smaller, bite-sized that I can consume. So it's instant sales friction. You've broken the flow.
And they've skipped over important information to get to something that may not be important. Like, maybe all the product text is in that big wall of text, but then below it, there's a bolded headline that says guaranteed. And they're like, oh, I see it's guaranteed, but I have no idea about the product specifications or anything like that, right? Because the eye fatigue that it takes to, your eyes naturally like, oof, I have to focus on that to read it. And I don't. Yeah. I'd rather just look at a short sentence. That's right. Actually, Bret, to touch on what you said before, that's a good, you're making a good point, like about margin running a huge sentence running all the way to the end of the page. Now, most websites truncate that and make that not an issue anymore. But what we still find is, especially on full width pages, which it's kind of a mix on product pages or whatever, but sometimes on the home page is a problem, is they still have a huge area where the sentence runs from one side to the other side instead of being a line break or whatever. And, we know from what research medical studies have shown and things like that, as well as like speed reading. If you've ever learned anything about speed reading, it's basically a type of like snapshot reading, but there's this, when they teach you how to speed read, they draw lines or an app over the page that goes straight down like this. And the idea is that your eyes never have to move, and you're taking a snapshot of the page, and your peripheral is picking up what's on the outside. And that's how speed reading, one of the ways that speed reading can get faster. So you should never have to move your eyes. Your eyes should stay straight. The other side of that, though, is they've also shown that anytime you have to turn your head to see more, it causes eye strain, fatigue, and irritation. So you shouldn't, like, if you're reading something on your screen, I don't want to have to look over to the far side of my screen. I want to be able to look straight forward. And if I move my eyes, it's just like this. Yeah. Not like this.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're on audio, sorry, you're not seeing my fingers move, but I was talking about quick, short little eye movements back and forth versus long traverses of your eye. You think, just do it in your head. Like, it's easier to go back and forth short than it is comfortable to go from one side of your eye socket to the other. So think about that from a readability perspective. That's why we say, no walls of text, no long run-on sentences, keep it short, keep it in the center of vision, columnize it, because if they have to move from one column to another, that's a distinction. They're comfortable doing that. But one continuous run-on, they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, man. I think it was about maybe 10 years ago, Apple, I remember they came onto the market with a really good design of text left, image right, text right, image left. And that seemed to set a whole new precedent for that changed the structure of websites all those years ago. And because of that, just bouncing off from that, another thing that I see a big problem is long sentences, right? Now, this is a bit of caveat. When anyone who's been learning copywriting for longer than 5 minutes knows the importance of conversational copy, which I'll probably touch on in a talk. But the summary or the description of what a conversational copy is writing as you speak, or more importantly, write as your market speaks. But the caveat to that is, we in general conversation, we speak in long sentences, but when you translate that to paper, also not paper, sorry, to the screen, it's if you keep the sentences really long, you're just giving them opportunities to trip up, and once they trip up, you break the flow, then they're going to start skim reading. So I have a rule: if possible, I keep my sentences 7 words or less long. Not including AI internet, it's just nice, short and punchy. Or if I have to, I might put the ellipsis, or I'll even, or a couple of dashes or whatever, just to break it up, giving people a bit of a breathing space instead of 15 commas in one big long sentence.
Yep. And that's actually a good point. Like, people, we're trained in school to write a certain way. Internet conversion, internet writing breaks all those conventions. We actually have it on our team. We have a professional editing team that edits all the content and everything, video scripts, anything we do that they edit. And when we first started working with them, when we first brought them on board, the issue was that they were like keeping to this collegiate like writing style. When you think about writing your college papers, they're these huge chunk paragraphs and they're just a pain in the ass to read. And the internet doesn't write that way. The internet, you almost have a space or a line break every one or two sentences. And that might drive your English teacher crazy, but it's what works online. And think about a wall of text from a cell phone perspective, right? Like if you have a paragraph that's this big on your, this big and this wide on your screen, on your desktop, it's going to take up your entire screen on your mobile device.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to read that. You're going to scroll right past it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I know I helped educate the editing team by purposely putting grammar mistakes in there just to keep them sharp.
Bret definitely keeps our grammar team sharp. He may be one of the best copywriters in the world, but man, that guy is not into grammar.
Yeah, well, I must say, since I've learned copywriting, my English has got much gooder.
Much gooder.
But
so what other mistakes are they making?
So those mistakes, there's layout mistakes, which we talked about, right? Mm-hmm. And another one, which is it's very simple but easily fixed, is just tiny text or even grey text. Tiny little things. They all small increments that can increase readability just by increasing font size, for instance. I'm not sure what's the BGS best practice now. Is it 16?
16. 16 is the smallest font size besides micro text that should be on your site. So all your headers, subheadlines, all that stuff should be bigger than 16-point font.
Absolutely. And generally black on white, not grey. All these things add up. So that they're kind of layout things which you guys doing over 1,000 hours of split testing every week. It's not our opinion, right? It's
fact. Data backs it up, right? Like that. It's crazy. Like sometimes we do it on all stores, but there have been times where just by changing the font size, we see a significant conversion lift that people would be like, "There's just no way," but that's the only thing we changed. And it again reduces eye strain, reduces irritation, makes it easier. That's the whole point. It's not to be cutesy or creative or artsy, or that's the other side of those mistakes, right? Like people who try to get too artsy with fancy fonts or colors and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Well, that's another topic. Just being too creative. Well, I think you said it, but there's another way of saying clarity beats creativity. Like some people try and be too clever, and I read their copy and I think, what the heck? If there's a double meaning, that's hard to. It can be confusing. You've already lost.
And any kind of like cursive or flowy or fancy font like that, it just does. It may look beautiful on paper, but it doesn't convey well to the screen and being able to be viewed. And it creates eye strain, and it just doesn't. It's not worth the benefit of having it be pretty if you want to actually make sales and money and sell customers.
Yeah. That's what I say. You don't have to do it, only if you want to make money.
Yeah, only if you want money.
So those, we just touched on a few of those layout friction points, which is going to decrease readability. And from a copywriting point of view, there's also, I think I can go deeper on this and talking about some best practices how to improve your copy for readability. But we talked about just short paragraphs, short sentences, good spacing in between the paragraphs as well. All those things increase readability. But from a copywriting point of view, if we start to sharpen your skills on that, I think conversational copy, believe it or not, Tanner, this is like, I've been teaching copywriting for 15 years, stages all around the world, and a lot of copywriters, if you're going to teach someone, you'd start off with, it makes sense to start to teach them how to understand your market better and understand their wants, desires, needs, and all that kind of stuff. And I get that, but if I'm looking to work with a copywriter, I'll first look at their base level skill of conversational copy. I've actually hired a blog writer who didn't even know what copywriting was. She just wrote these cool conversational blog posts. I said, "Can I teach you how to, copywriting?" And she just picked up so well because she had that great level of conversational skill there. And the reason I bring this up as a priority, because it's such a refreshing break from the old monotonous, institutionalized textbook style copy. And we all grew up on that, except for me. I slept through school. So when I learned copywriting, it was like my first lesson on how to write. But conversational copy is just a great way to just simulate a real life conversation, as if you're sitting around the kitchen table speaking to a friend or around a barbecue, and it just increases readability, because it just has a very conversational flow to it. It's not sterile and plain, boring vanilla. So how could I help people write on this call how to improve their conversational copy?
Yeah, what would be like, in terms of priority, what would be the most important way that they could kind of go through it?
Well, let me start with this. I believe, I don't want to jump around. I want to keep where we're going, but on conversational copy, it's important. I generally start my text with a one sentence paragraph, and then maybe another one. I don't start with a big paragraph. I'll just baby step them, because if I can get them to read like maybe the headline, the subheadline, the intro line, and if they generally commit to reading like 4 times, then they'll generally read more because you got some momentum.
Yep.
Right. The only way you can stuff it up is if your copy sucks. Right. So the opening line. Let me see if I can remember this. The opening line I used for that hat company, the market was a community who loved to have a bit of a drink and party, right? Mm-hmm. So, the message on the hat was a little bit in your face, tongue in cheek. So I said, the opening line said, "As subtle as a sledgehammer, this hat is as cool as 3 frozen margaritas," or something like that. Right, mm-hmm. So that's a lot better way to open product description instead of saying 100% cotton.
Yes,
So you've got some. So the quick answer on how to get good at conversational copy is write as your market speaks. So how do you get good at that? Right, the best way is to read reviews, because a lot of the reviews, some people actually naturally write good copy without even realizing. All right, so that's so if you're new on the e-commerce journey, just go to someone in your market, even Amazon, and just immerse yourself with some reviews. And then when you do that, when you've got a spreadsheet with some really awesome reviews, start highlighting some snippets that are gold, right? And some of these snippets are headline worthy. I mean, mm-hmm. Again, that's another podcast session just in headlines, right? But so I know there's a conversational bit of copy that worked really well in the health and supplement space, which is this supplement. Someone said this helped me kick my cravings to the curb. Right now, that little snippet from a review just converted like gangbusters in Facebook ads, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So no matter where you are on the journey, just dive into the reviews and pick up those little conversational, highly descriptive snippets, right? And what I do for 15 years, when I saw some cool little snippets like that, I used to copy it and put it into a Word doc called "Cool Conversational Snippets" and just start collect them. And I actually call them punch words. And I know. Mm-hmm. I've created, that's grown into probably a 15-page report for all the Ecom BGS community to use, which is good little conversational snippets. So start collecting those kind of things, right? Whether you said, I don't know when or where I'm going to use it, it doesn't matter. Start collecting the swipe file, because otherwise you'll when it's time to write, you'll be staring at a blank screen and suffer from blank screen syndrome. At least you got something to have a springboard from.
Yep.
So reviews is one aspect. Also, sometimes I might, depending on what market I'm in, I might watch some YouTube videos as well of people describing. And this really hinges around this principle, and that is this. If you can describe somebody's problem better than they can, they automatically think you have the solution, right? That's worth repeating. I say, if you can describe somebody's problem better than they can, they automatically think you have the solution. So how do you get good at describing somebody's problems? Well, again, reviews is great. And another step is email your lists and say, what's the number one single biggest frustration when it comes to XYZ, whatever problem you're solving. And if you have to give them a 20% discount just for filling that out, go for it. It'll only make you more money.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll also give you an incredible database of really good descriptive people writing their stories and describing their problems. And you can repurpose that many times over and really get good at and you can put them in your product descriptions, your Facebook ads, all that kind of stuff. So and a third lesson for conversational copy. I can take a very boring, if you're naturally not a good writer, if you've been institutionalized and you actually paid attention at school like I didn't, then I can take a very boring, plain vanilla sentence and add a pulse and bring it to life. And I do it with this way. I top and tail it. I can put a snippet of conversation at the start and a snippet of conversational copy at the end. It could be something like this. It could be, oh, by the way, ... Insert your sentence at the end. Know what I mean? ? So straight away, that just having that little bit of a buffer, it actually turns it into a real life conversation. It makes the reader feel like it's not.
You're talking to them versus it being some corporate speak kind of dry, generic thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing you need to remind yourself, everyone watching and listening to this, and that is this: the reading comprehension rate of Westernized adults is equivalent to a 13-year-old, right? So with that said, people for years have been paying me deservedly good amounts of money just to dumb down their copy, right? What I've seen, a lot of business owners are so close to their business and they can't understand logically why people aren't buying from them, and they try and bash them over the head with logic. And I go in there and just dumb it down and make it readable for a 13-year-old. In fact, there was one. I'll just tell you a quick story, Tanner. There was one company I did a promotion for, and this is a good story actually. They had a bunch of land to sell around Australia, and I came up with this big marketing idea. And it went live, and this is only the short version, but I remember a week after it went live, I received this email that said, something like said, "Stop all marketing." I went, what? I opened it, and they said they decided in Australia we've got 5 or 6 states, not like the US, right? And they thought they tested into a state called Western Australia, and the influx of sales calls that came in for it was so much, the whole team had to put a pause on any other marketing just to kind of
just to handle what was coming in.
And what they didn't know is before I handed that marketing material over to them, I bribed my kids, my twin boys, who Jacob, he works in the team. Mm-hmm. They were 12 or 13. I bribed them to read it out to me out loud, right? And if they tripped up or stumbled, I'd say stop, and I'd put a red circle around that and say keep reading. I had to bribe them with a Happy Meal to do it because they wouldn't do it just because I'm their dad. But and I'd got them to read the whole thing, and any time they stumble, I knew that the reader would stumble, so I just simplify it. And how do you simplify it? You don't use so many big words, right? And shorter sentences, and just really dumb it down so it's a frictionless, like you said, a subconscious, they're on Valley and just going through it without even stumbling, So there's some good principles to increase readability and make it conversational, and it works.
And that everything you just talked about is if hey, you have shitty or sucky copy. Bret doesn't like me to cuss, so you have sucky copy. Your copy sucks. What he just talked about is a great way to improve that and get and take mediocre or poor written copy and give it a little facelift and there's maybe some Band-Aids that needs a complete rewrite, but it'll definitely give you a lift over what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And so that's and there's other things like like I see a lot of people feel compelled to use big words. Big words meaning 3 or 4 syllable words. Now, if you've got a sentence with multiple words that big, that's like just throwing banana peels in front of someone taking a run. Of course, they're going to trip up. So, my job as a copywriter is can I get the same message across in the shortest amount of words, and this is the important part, without diluting emotion. The only time I will add a word is if it injects emotion. An example, there was an ad running for hair loss that a good friend of mine, Pete, and it was unwanted hair, question mark. It wasn't hair loss, it was actually, unwanted hair, question mark. And they run that ad and got okay results. And then they added one word, unwanted ugly hair, question mark, and it got 4 times the response, because sometimes adding an emotional word can actually increase conversion.
Yep, and tie it to the person, give it more feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was learning copy and I was writing lots and lots of long form sales letters, and the way I got better at it was I just had to write them, right? And just figure it out. But I remember, I can't remember who I learned it from. But they always said that, like, go ahead and write your sentence. And then there was like 4 different words that they're like, okay, now go through your sentences and remove anytime you see this word, like the word then or then, and if most sentences, you could scratch out the word then or that or whatever.
Yeah, that. Yeah.
Yeah, that. And then you scratch that word out, but the sentence still reads perfectly. But when you wrote it, you couldn't get rid of that word, but then you go in and scratch it out and read it without the word, and it reads perfectly. And I remember I was writing a sales letter for a window cleaning product. It was a long form, 30 or 40 page long form sales letter. And I had these words, I scratched them all out after I printed it out, and it looked like I had dipped my entire page in red ink because there were so many extra words. And when I removed those words, you couldn't tell that I removed the words.
Yeah, that's a great example. The word "that" is superfluous. It's it's so many times. Those little things just make it easier to read, shorter, and that's a good example. Yeah.
So what else is there?
Well, another way to increase readability. This is instead of just having. I mean, we talked about having walls of text, but also you can have like a big long line of text, meaning if you can break it up with bullet points. It's been shown by heat maps. Skim readers will stop on a bullet point. They'll generally read the first, second, the 1 or 2 first bullet points. They may read the last bullet point. And then they'll skim read and stop at sub-headlines. So sub-headlines is what we call a double readership path. So double readership path is the skim readers, when they land on your product description, for an example. I mean, most people don't wake up in the morning thinking, I really want to read something from an e-commerce store today, right? So you've got to try and make it easy for them to consume your material. So breaking them up with sub-headlines is really important, because they can just rest on a sub-headline and see if it's going to catch their interest. Another way you can do it is break it up with imagery as well. So we've seen some good Ecom Insider members who have got phenomenal conversion rates by breaking them up with GIFs, because obviously motion draws their attention in.
Yep.
But at least that's we don't expect, even us copywriters don't expect everyone to read everybody to read every single word. We're not that stupid, but we know that if we can take them on a double readership path, so if all they do is just stop and read the sub headlines or the different areas broken up, and you're still taking them through the sales flow in order of priority. And for instance, when I talk about the arrangement of that, you don't put your best stuff right down the bottom, right? You got to put your best punches forward. So you try and get your best stuff, the most influential things that's going to inspire them to buy. You put up the top. So what would that be? Well, in the copywriting world, it's proof. Proof is the chief conversion element on anything, because people don't believe what we say, they believe what other people say. So if you can inject 5-star reviews up there nice and early. That's important, or anything that's backed up by someone, just so it takes the pressure off you. Because something I learned from Dan Kennedy, and that is statements can be challenged, but stories are believed. So anytime I make a statement, I don't want to open a loop in their head just question that. I'll straight away put a review that backs that up. So if I'm talking about quality, I'll say, our quality is the highest and we hold ourselves at the highest standard. Then underneath saying, someone can say, these guys have the best quality. They back that up, So
social proof element that ties into what was the claim that was made, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So the double readership path is really important. You could increase. We could increase somebody's conversion by using the same text, but simply just breaking it up with some bullet points, some sub-headlines and some imagery. And all it's going to do is increase readability, because the more they read, the more they buy.
Yeah. And the double readership path, guys, it sounds technical and it sounds like one of those big words things that Bret's talking about, but it's actually a really simple concept when you break it down. So the double readership path, there's two paths. There is the high level 30,000 foot view, or the Reader's Digest version, which is the sub headline path. And then there is the expanded deep view, or the detailed story. So you've got the Reader's Digest version, and then you've got the encyclopedia. Those are the two stories. But they're telling the exact same story, or the cliff notes of a book and the actual book itself, right? That's the way that works. So basically the way it is that they read through the headline, the subheads, they get the entire gist of the story just by reading that. But the thing is if any one of those subheadlines catches their attention, right beneath that subheadline is the expanded version that backs up what the subheadline says or provides more detail. So it allows people to get the bits and pieces of the story they want. Skim readers can read the subheadlines, and then the analytical people can get sucked into the detail when and where they need it, but don't have to read through all the stuff to find out what's important to them.
Yeah, that absolutely, man. Thanks for and that's why imagery is also good in product descriptions,
yes,
if possible too. And I'll share this cool story with you, Tanner. Years ago, I was paid to do full page newspaper ads for all the major publications all around Australia to fill up a live event. And there was one particular, it was the same newspaper. It was a half-page ad, all right, and it went to all 6 states. And we'd run them multiple times. And all of a sudden, one day, there was one state where it got this considerably massive spike, and we had no idea why. And I'm thinking, what's the go there? And then we asked the newspaper, can you send us a PDF of that, because they didn't change the copy, but this was a very significant spike. The only difference was on this paper than all the rest is the article beforehand was about a shark attack, with this big great white shark attack, right? That's all it was, right? And so many people landed on that, and then underneath they read our ad. And we worked out it was actually more profitable for us to buy a full page ad, keep our half ad page there, and just put a dummy shark attack article at the top, and we would have made more money. Right? So and that's what I say to people when people read newspapers. Not many people do these days, I guess, but it's estimated they stay on a page for 3 seconds. Now, what do you think they're doing on those 3 seconds? They're scanning images and headlines, and in their mind, they're subconsciously thinking, is there anything that gives me enough reason to stop? Anything in this page gives me enough reason to stop? Here's something, and they go in. So they're waiting for something to jump out of the page, grab them by the collar, and pull them in. That's increasing readability. So those things.
It's a great example.
Yeah. So find a way to put shark attack photos in your product.
Yeah, that's the secret, guys. Shark attack photos on your ecom stores, and money will rain from the sky.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we can go deep on that, mate. And also, I'm giving this advice with an assumption, which is always dangerous, that they know their market really well. They know their fears, objections, and they know what's important and what's not.
Yep. That's a big one. So I would say the thing now I'd say is, are there any, resources that you have for people or anything like that they can leverage to help improve on this?
Yeah, cool. I'll give you a simple and easy one, which is it's called the Hemingway app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you type in Hemingway app, Google it, it'll come up. You can write your copy, and you can just paste it. It's a free app. You can paste it in there, and that'll give you a grade of scoring. Like it could be a grade 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or more, and you want to get that as low as possible, because that shows you the what level of grade the comprehension rate is, and it'll highlight all the clunky sentences for you. So you can do your best at writing a very easy to read chunk of copy, put it on the app, and that'll give you a grade. Anything above 4, it's danger zone, to be honest with you. Yep. It's not too much. When I write, if I have to write an email for BGS for whatever reason, I'm anywhere from 0 to 2. I just keep it so simple, and it's because they get read. And I know you're very similar. You're an amazing copywriter, and most good marketers like yourself are good copywriters as well, and they understand that.
Yeah, the Hemingway app is actually quite surprising. You think you wrote something simple. The other thing you can do is, if you have to write something to your team, put it in there as well. It doesn't have to be just marketing materials, but that's where I've been the most surprised by it, because I put a lot of effort into my copy to make sure it is simple, like Bret's talking about, because I have some experience doing it. But I took some emails and some Slack messages that I was going to be sending to the team and put those in there, and they were way complex. I think I had like 6s and 7s on some of them, and I'm like, oh, and that makes you think, like, is this why things don't get miscommunicated, or people don't get the results that they want because they're not understanding what you're talking about? So I had to go back into my messages, and I made sure that they were simpler. And it wasn't that the topic was so complex. It's just the way that I had written it was not, a very easy to read format.
Yeah, absolutely. That's mate. Yeah, that's that's interesting. I've never thought about that internal conversation. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So Hemingway app is really good. Another resource you can do, not a resource, but it's more of a bit of a hack, and that is sit down opposite someone that you feel comfortable with, and ask and record a conversation you have with them, and try and sell them on your product. Get it transcribed, and then you'll have 70% of your copy done. If because most people speak good copy, just take out all the ums and the ahs and the and that's a really good way to actually get your core message across in a really real conversational tone.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool way to do it. I like that idea.
Yeah. I did that with one of my first copywriting clients. I just said, "Sell me on this," on a Skype call. He just went hell for leather for 10 minutes. I got it transcribed. I just arranged it, put it back to him. He went live, made a bunch of money, and he thought I was a legend. No, maybe I was, but like it was his. Yeah, he spoke it.
Yeah, and you're right, because the thing is when you talk to someone and when you write are two different things. When you're writing your product description, you get into this mindset of, I'm trying to sell somebody. I got to figure this out. When you talk to somebody, we're conditioned, and we know that we're not going to use that same language. We're going to have a conversation, and I'm just going to slip in my sales methodology as I do it, whatever that is. And it's just such a conversational tone. You're going to say the same thing that you were trying to say by writing it, but you're going to say it in a much more friendly and approachable and easily digestible way. If you think about it, like when you have something technical to discuss, you read it because it's technical and it needs to be considered. And then if it's something that's simpler, you just throw it in the conversation.
Absolutely. And you just reminded me of another good point. And I know you've got to wrap this up, but it's really important. There's a mindset hack of thinking about who you're writing to when you're writing. Because if you're thinking that you're writing to 10,000 people, straight away, that's going to put you in a frame of mind which is a lot of pressure, and it's not going to give you a real authentic message. If you think you're speaking to one person and someone that you know personally, then instantly you'll come through with a more conversational, like you said, Tanner, relaxed kind of style.
Way less salesy.
Yeah, and here's the ideal person to think about writing. It's someone who could afford to buy a lot of your products, but has a healthy level of skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you might have some fanboys, fangirls out there who'll buy everything, but don't write to them because you might overlook selling them as well. So someone who's got money to buy, a lot of people who are they sometimes have a mindset challenge when it comes to they don't want to ask for money, right? Because they and that can come through in the copy, if you buy and all that kind of stuff in emails. But you got to if you love your product, it's your duty, it's your obligation to get it into the world, right? Because if not through you, they're going to buy a crappy product of someone else. So you write with that confidence, and you write to someone who's got the money to buy, but they've got a healthy level of skepticism, and write to that one person. If you know that person personally, then that's the magic right there, like a family member or whatever, because that'll help you write in that real conversational tone. Absolutely.
No, that's good. Bret, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, if you're listening to this, make sure you take action on it. Again, these episodes are for you, and Bret just dumped a bunch of gold in your lap right now, and all you got to do, I hope you were taking notes, but if not, you can watch it again. But what you need to do right now is go over to iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever, and YouTube, and subscribe to both of them. So you can watch the video podcast when we share our screens, and you can listen to it on audio when you're on the go. So make sure you're subscribed to both. To do that, go over to buildgrowscale.com/podcast. You can get the show notes there and links to where this podcast is, both on YouTube and everywhere else that it is syndicated. And then again, guys, if you like this, if you enjoyed what Bret had to say, if you like the podcast, leave us a review. Let others know that you like it. Let's share it with the world. Help us get it out there. And then also feel free to leave us a comment and tell us other topics you'd like us to cover on the show. And then in future episodes, we can do that. Again, the show's for you. So help us make it what you want it to be. And with that, guys, we will see you in the next episode.
See you guys.